Hi, and welcome everyone to KLEFF Talks. A short introduction about KLEFF, otherwise known as Kuala Lumpur Eco Film Festival. KLEFF is Malaysia's first and longest serving platform promoting sustainable living. KLEFF showcases environmentally themed films and programs at a record of 14 years. Since the pandemic, KLEFF has evolved from just a physical festival into a digital one through its online screening platform, otherwise known as KLEFFix. And KLEFF has been known to give young creators opportunities to showcase their work and provide a platform with its environmental themed events, which leads us to today's topic of youth advocacy for environmental awareness, development, and empowerment. We have 4 guest speakers here today. First, we have Wisia Fong. She's 21, a final year student pursuing environmental and geographical science at University of Nottingham, Malaysia. She volunteers at Zero Waste Malaysia and is the founder of Waste Not Project, an educational project on zero waste movement centered around the university community. Secondly, we have Nur Aina Maisara. She is also 21, a graduate student of University of Nottingham, Malaysia, and has been actively involved in environmental activism from a young age. Third, we have Shakil, who is currently the UK Pact Officer at British High Commission Kuala Lumpur and is currently volunteering as a campaigner with My Hutan. Last but not least, we have Celine Ng, who is the Assistant Coordinator for the Rehabilitation, Restoration and Conservation Pillar in Ecoknights, as well as a mentor in Greensmith's launch internship. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
How's everyone doing today?
We're good.
Brilliant.
Doing good.
All right. Hi. Wisia, we'll start with you. How are you doing today? Would you like to add anything, any more introduction about yourself? And do tell us more about your journey to environmental advocacy.
Thank you, Sabrina. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. And then I'm currently a final student pursuing environmental and geographical science at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. And also, I'm the founder of a Waste Not project, which is an educational project that aims to initiate a zero waste movement in my campus university. So how I started my advocacy journey is when I start to realize the importance of to protect our earth when I was during my high school time. Then from there, I came across with zero waste lifestyles and also plant-based diet. So since 2017, I've been trying to reduce my waste generation and also trying out different kind of plant-based diets to increase my impact on the environmental positively and also to raise awareness on environmental issues among my friends. And then I also started to advocate using my own social media to get more friends to join the movement together. And then during my degree, so I take environmental science because I want to learn more about how youth and also like what we can do for our environment. And then in 2019, I also joined the climate strike. Then I realized actually there are a lot other Malaysians like me. We are also very care about the climate change issues. So it's really motivated me to continue my journey. And then last year, I managed to work with some of my friends and we managed to establish a volunteering network at my uni, which is Waste Not Project under UMNC to raise more awareness about zero waste issue and also a sustainable lifestyle with our uni student and also our uni staff. And then a few months ago, I managed to have an internship at Ecoknights. So from here, I really learned a lot about sustainability in different fields. So this is my advocacy journey.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's quite clear how strong community is with your journey for environmental advocacy because it involves networking with a lot of people to have people join the movement. And I think that's a really great way to start. Next, let's move on to Aina. Why don't you share a little bit more about yourself as well as your journey into being an advocate for environmental issues?
So my name is Aina. I'm 21 years old. I recently graduated the University of Nottingham, just like Lisha, in August of 2021. And I'm also a fresh first year postgraduate student at Nottingham as well. So yeah, in regards to my journey, it's actually started quite a while ago, and I actually have a very vivid image of my start in my interest in the environment. So when I was in elementary school at the age of 11, I had to write an essay about one thing happening in the world. So whatever I wanted, I could pick something. And I found an article about deforestation. So after researching and reading about it, I was very shocked because at that age, it was just really crazy. Like, why are forests being cut down? Who needs all these trees? And like, what's going to happen to the animals that live in the forest? So yeah, I think that essay was the very first spark. And then from then on, I did a lot in my community and in my school to really try to raise awareness about other environmental issues. So in middle school, I joined a club called Rockin' for the Environment. So at the time, I really loved to sing. So I actually participated in a fundraiser to save Malayan sun bears. So I did a little like performance for that. And I think later that year, I had a huge life change. So I actually moved to the US, which explains my accent a little bit. But of course, that didn't stop me from doing what I loved and my passion. So I think even with the new environment, I was really interested, and I'm a very curious person. So I'm consistently like pushing myself out of my boundaries and just trying new things. So I actually started volunteering in high school in Central Park, doing like removal of invasive species, like gardening and things like that. And I also got a chance to work with an NGO called BioBus. So I was able to become a teacher. I taught science concepts, biology concepts to younger students. So we taught them things like light, water filtration, and even aquatic microorganisms. So even with them, I was also able to conduct my own research. And they also taught me a lot about different ways to advocate, not just by teaching or by doing things on the ground, but also through protesting. And I think in the US, it's a very big thing there to protest for anything that you care about. So I actually have a picture of me marching in Washington for science and scientists. And I think that was a really, really great memory in my journey. And this was all, while I was juggling schoolwork in high school, and it was all just passion. And then after I finished high school in the US, I actually moved back to Malaysia. So that's when I started my undergraduate degree. And I was really excited because I don't even need to learn math too much anymore. Like, I was learning things that I really, really liked, my passion. I made amazing friends who all also had the same passions as me. And I think that's the great thing about Nottingham. There's also quite a lot of opportunities for leadership. So I was encouraged by my friends to run for a position in the Students Association at Nottingham as the sustainability officer. So I was voted into office in 2019. And I had an amazing experience trying to plan events. So we did movie nights, workshops, panel talks. I was also volunteering with Isaac abroad in Yogyakarta. So I was in a project called Handvironment. So we learned about tofu, batik waste in the city and how we can recycle it. I also was a RASMA volunteer. So I volunteered at the Tropical Rainforest Conservation Research Center. And then that was just my uni years. And then I finally graduated a few months ago. So yeah, that is my current journey. So now I am an MPhil to PhD postgraduate research student at Nottingham, doing research about pharmaceutical compounds in river water and how to filter it. And if you'd like to know more, I can talk about it later.
Wow, that sounds like quite a journey, and congratulations on your graduation.
Thank you.
From what you've shared, I think it's really, really cool to see how influential education really is, because from what you've said, since primary school, you've already been quite aware, and education does give us all this information and opportunities, as well as giving students a voice to have that sort of power within the school system. And it also allows people who were once students to share that with other people or the younger generation, so that can continue the good fight. Thank you so much for sharing. Now let's move on to Shakil. Welcome to KLEFF Talks. Is there anything you would like to share on your journey or as you as an environmental advocate?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sabrina. I just wanted to point out this feels like a mini reunion because I'm also a Nottingham graduate. So I did environmental science and I graduated in 2018. And excuse me, just wanted to share that during my university years as well, I joined several environmental initiatives, which includes the likes of the Malaysian Youth Delegation, which I'll talk about a bit more as we go along. But I guess as far as how I started off with my environmental advocacy journey, I would say it was very much how do I put it? I did it in the interest of my career, essentially. So I started off, I guess, joining as many environmental initiatives as possible, starting with PowerShift Malaysia, which is essentially a environmental activism organization. I think that was back in 2015, just to find out the different branches of environmentalism that exists, especially what's happening here locally in Malaysia. So after PowerShift Malaysia, I got involved with the Malaysian Youth Delegation, which is actually PowerShift's sister organization. So where PowerShift Malaysia focused on on-ground environmental activism, the Malaysian Youth Delegation was more towards policy making and climate diplomacy. So through the Malaysian Youth Delegation, I had the privilege of attending the UN climate change conferences that was in 2017 as well as 2018, respectively. And honestly, it was such an eye-opening experience, especially when you see how vocal young people are in ensuring that their voices should be heard, as far as policymaking is concerned. So on top of the Malaysian Youth Delegation, I got myself involved with the Bornean Sound Bear Conservation Center. That was right before I joined the Malaysian Youth Delegation, which was in 2017. So by virtue of BSBCC, I guess part of me wanted to find out whether going into environmental conservation was for me or not. I realized it wasn't, but it doesn't take away the fact that it is such an important field of work, wildlife conservation, forest conservation, so on and so forth. And I guess I just wanted to say, by virtue of having joined the Malaysian Youth Delegation, and I guess being in a space where young people were vocal, where young people spoke up, and just knowing how important it is, our voices had to be heard, it made me realize that, going into climate policy, going into the field of climate diplomacy was something I would want to do in the long run. So I'm very grateful that I am within the climate diplomacy space by virtue of this, by virtue of the UK PAC program that I'm involved with the British High Commission. If anyone wants to know more a bit about what that program entails, happy to speak about it as we go along. Thanks.
Thank you, Shakil, so much for sharing. I think it's really, really amazing and really looking forward into the future, because your journey in climate advocacy was just straight up aiming for the big guns, for the people in power, and like trying to handle it from an administrative bureaucracy kind of standpoint. And that is really quite, I don't know, like speaking in the aspect of like youth for climate advocacy, it takes a lot of courage to just aim straight to the top of the pyramid. So kudos to that, a lot of respect for that. Last but not least, we have Celine Ng. Welcome. Would you like to give a short introduction about yourself, as well as talk about your journey as an advocate for the environment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. But first of all, just want to share, I'm not a graduate from Nottingham. Basically, I got my degree last year from University Malaysia Sabah in conservation biology. Just started my master's research this year. My study focuses on infectious disease, and my major is immunology, that focuses on wildlife infectious disease. So to date back, where did I start the whole environmental advocacy journey? Is actually back 5 years ago when I started my undergrad degree in Sabah, I got really it's a really beautiful place filled with a lot of biodiversity. Malaysia is so beautiful with the islands and this mountains, all these protected areas. We are really blessed with all this nature that we have in Malaysia. That's kind of sparked my interest, wanting to do more, wanting to protect, because at the same time I can see there's like pollutions going on, and there's a lot of issues that has been happening in Sabah, as to why I've my whole journey actually started with all this volunteerism, and I have this opportunity to involve in ISAC. It's a global volunteering organization, focuses on the sustainable development goals. To me, I kind of feel like I'm very inclined to the whole concept of sustainable development, having like social, environment, economy coming together, contributing to all these 17 different goals. So back then I just thought of, how can I incorporate my field, my background on conservation into this protecting the ecosystem in Sabah. And I really like the islands there. This is why I started with a marine project. So I started a marine project called Nature Warrior. It's actually a marine conservation project, and we have volunteers all around the world coming to this tip of Borneo in Sabah. It's called Kudat, and restore the ecosystem, replanting corals, and also replanting all this mangrove, just making sure everyone gets this awareness going on and bringing back that kind of mindset to their own countries. So that's how, at the same time, when I was in Sabah, I think the first thing, the first volunteer I had was it's called Borneo Eco Film Festival. Now thinking back, I think film actually make a huge impact in my life. So Borneo Eco Film Festival was actually my first volunteer in Sabah, and then that's how I think it's so important to get this kind of environmental films connecting with science research and all this issues going on, and making into some creative approaches. As to why, when I came back, I just kind of Google if there's any, because I'm a Penangite, so I came back to Penang and was looking at, is there anything interesting that's happening in Peninsular Malaysia that's related to ecofilm? And then that's how I found Ecoknights with all this Kuala Lumpur Ecofilm Festival. Like I was so excited, and I am really determined to be part of it, to join this organization and also be part of this film festival. But when I came back, the pandemic situation basically changes everything. And while like conservation is actually quite a niche field, so I had some opportunities working in the field in different protection areas in Penang as well, having this research on wildlife and exposed to different stakeholders, and channeling all this creative environmental educations. And also eventually I've also got selected in the Root Census Malaysia last year, and get to volunteer with different organizations, and Ecoknights was one of them. So I came to understand the whole point of having the most important thing of getting awareness is actually through effective science communications, as to why I'm still pursuing my master's research in science. And I think it's really important to bridge the knowledge gap through all these creative approaches. This is the whole journey that I have been doing, and right now I'm also involved in working on with Mahathir Science Award Foundation and the Academy of Sciences Malaysia on how to organize this upcoming international conference on tropical science. And the tagline is, "The future belongs to the tropics." So basically, I think the point is, in my whole journey, I feel really fulfilling, like meeting different kinds of people, meeting like-minded people, connect together and work together for that mutual goal that we want to protect the planet. Yeah, that is all from me.
Thank you so much, Celine, for sharing. I think that it is mighty efficient that you're fully utilizing the discipline that you studied for it to relate to how you contribute to environmental advocacy, as well as bridging the knowledge gap. I think that is also really important because to make information accessible to people so that people will take the interest and they don't think that it's just a really elitist community. That is a really great way to go as well. Thank you everyone for sharing. Now moving on to the next subtopic. It's challenges faced by youth in environmental advocacy. And as someone who is pretty young myself, that is also really keen in this topic, personally, the challenges that I face in my journey, I would have to say would be people not taking us seriously because we're so much younger, and because we're so young, we of course do not have as much experience as the people who are in power have, and we also do not have the capital to make as much tangible change. And again, I think for my personal journey, I guess, would be just having to communicate with the people who came before, because it was a completely different time and there was that gap of who knows what happened in the middle. So there's like so many different worldviews. It all contributes to making the situation a bit more challenging. I'd love to know all of your views on this, on what particular challenges that you guys had personally in your journey. Let's start with Wisya again.
Thank you, Sabrina. I think I also faced a similar challenge with yours. So in this case, it's most like when we're talking to the elders, for example, my parents, and whenever I told them like, oh, you should recycle this, you should recycle that, and they would wonder like, they would think like these are all useless, or like you just put it there and the garbage truck will just come and sort out all the recyclables and you're done. You don't have to like go and wash and clean all the recyclables and do so many things. Yeah, so I feel like kind of demotivated when I receive like rejection from my parents. But then I don't make this as but I make it as like a lesson. So I know that they feel like I don't have experience. So I can try to look up to like some YouTube and share some videos with them so that they feel like, okay, so other people are also talking the same thing as me. So they are kind of believe it. Yeah. But then in terms of friends, because when I came across with this environmental awareness is when I was in high school. And then by the time we don't learn much about the current issue about the environment in high school. So when I told my friends like, hey, like you see the ocean is full of our plastic waste, so we should reduce our waste. And they always just like, okay. And then the next day you still see your friends using all the plastics. So they feel like, because we don't see in front of our face, we don't live by the beach, we don't go to the ocean, so we don't know like the situation is actually happening. So that's actually demotivates me, because I feel like, oh, why you don't listen to me? Like this is all the truth, and if you guys don't want to listen, if you guys don't want to change our behavior, then what will happen to our future, right? And another challenge is also like people that they are aware, but then they feel like what you're doing now is useless, and they kind of like feel like we are weird and they don't want to like hang out with you. So it's kind of like, hey, am I a weirdo right now? Yeah, but then I always have a quote to myself, meaning like it's okay to be different as long as you're doing things right. Because like in our friend circles, when I come across of these zero waste and also like plant-based diets, then I'm actually the first one that very open to these lifestyle. So they'll feel like, oh, why is so weird one, like suddenly change to another person. Yeah, and also we'll have friends, they are like, they know I don't like plastic. Not like I don't like plastic, but I advocate to reduce your plastic waste and stuff. And they just purposely show off their plastic bags in front of you. Yeah, so this is the challenges that we face. But I would say during recent years, because the awareness on environmental issues in Malaysia is gradually coming out, and most people as you can see, you go to supermarket and they will say, oh, no plastic bag today, and also like no plastic straw in this restaurant. So the awareness is like coming out, and gradually more people is like open to this, and also they already know there is such thing, and they won't like shame you or anything. Yeah. So these kind of my challenges that I face.
Thank you so much, Tricia. I think a lot of people viewing this will find it quite relatable that to be an advocate or to be someone to take a stand is a really isolating journey, because people will be like, yo, why this person so kiasu one, you know? Of course, yeah, it's gonna be a really lonely journey, I guess, but I think it's also like really important to be very clear on what the goal is and to not lose track of that. And kudos to you for staying on that path and to continue staying on that path. Next, let's go to Aina. What do you think are the challenges that are faced by the youth when it comes to environmental activism or advocacy?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to build on what both of you have said so far. It's very, very relatable. And I think we're all from the same generation. Just, believing in something that not very many people believed in, at least before. I mean, now, like Wisha said, like there's a lot of awareness, some restaurants don't have plastic straws anymore, or they reduce plastic bags. Grab has like an option for you to request for no cutleries. Like there are very great tiny steps that are happening now. But as a youth growing up, before this time, I think that loneliness that you mentioned, Sabrina, is very relatable. I think in my friend circle, I was also like Wisha, the first to open and vocal about, reducing my waste. It starts with the 3 R's, at least for me in my personal journey. Like that's what we learned first, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. And that's, it was a very interesting concept to me, but not a lot of people like absorbed that as well as I did. But I didn't let what anybody else said bring me down. I was more like, okay, this is something I want to do. And it was a passion enough that I really didn't care what like anyone else said. But it also came to a point for me, at least, as you grow up, you realize, oh, people in power have a voice. Like people who have authority can tell other people what to do. And that is so efficient, right? Like that at that age, it's like, whoa, that's really cool. So, as a young girl, like I was really interested in a lot of leadership positions, like regardless of what it was, like if it was student government or leader of my school's environmental club, I went for it, I think, and I gradually got there, because at that age I felt like the best way to make a change is to be in a position of power to do so. And looking back now, like with Greta Thunberg, like it really doesn't matter. Power really doesn't matter. It was a construct that was taught to us at a very young age. And I think with the rise in awareness, social media, it's really easy to find like-minded people. There are so many different projects that are going on in Malaysia, and that's really exciting and fun. You get to meet more people who are doing really interesting things, but there's still quite a lot of challenges. So that loneliness and the lack of power is something I think a lot of youth face. And also as a young child, I was ambitious. So I don't think I had as many resources or mentors until maybe later in high school, who believed in me and also supported me. So I think like Wisha, it might be your parents, but for me, it was also just people outside of my family. Like I wanted other people to know that caring for the environment is not something niche. It's a responsibility for all humans that live on the planet, right? Yeah, and I think one more challenge that I wanted to touch on that has already actually been touched on is demotivation. As Gen Z, I guess you would say, a lot of people, like we like to joke about death, and I don't think, we take it very lightly, but it's also very serious in a way. Like it forms our mindset. We think of the future as as doom, inevitable. And because of the lack of resources and support we have, we, feel that it is very real, that, there might not be a future for us. And that's why we have to act now. But we also get burnt out by that kind of pressure on us. And I feel like a lot of us would also agree with that. The world is becoming more expensive, more ruthless, uninviting. It's really hard for youth to even get jobs now, to really like make a difference. You have to be 21 to vote, right? So now that I've turned 21, it's okay, but things are changing. Things are changing slowly, but it's the burnout, it's the long process that we have to go through. And because, saving the environment is not just a one day type of thing, you kind of have to, go with the flow and push through. And I think that's one challenge really that I resonate a lot with.
Thank you so much for sharing the whole burnt out thing. Very relatable, because relating to information, like you say how you practice the 3 hours because that's where the basic starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like that's just a sliver of information, like the very tip of what people tell you. And that to have access and people to give you these resources and to help tell you more, that is it does help you, and it helps push you quite the length in this journey. But the burnout is really something that I think we should have more of a conversation about in the future, like as a community of activists, because sometimes when you see all this bad news, you start to feel really panicked and really troubled. I guess troubled is the kind of word.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't like, in addition to being just environmentally sustainable, we also need to learn how to be more mentally sustainable and not just, at the side of whatever, So I think it's really great that you pointed that out. Thank you so much for sharing. Hi, Shakil, I'm back to you. What do you think were the challenges in your journey of environmental activism?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Sabrina. And actually, I wanted to pick up on a point you mentioned earlier about I guess even amongst young people, I think it is apparent that there are issues that are faced by different generations or different batches of people, especially if you are part of the same organization or you have been part of the same organization, which brings me to my first point, having been within the youth climate policy space. So I guess access to policymakers is the point I wanted to make, right? And I bring back to the point of, intergenerational issues, in the sense where I guess when I was with the youth organization, by virtue of our predecessors, you could call it, having struggled to build relations with policymakers, when it came to our time, speaking to policymakers was easy, It was a very facilitated process. It was smooth sailing. It was straightforward. And mind you, this was in 2017, whereas for our seniors within the Malaysian youth delegation at that time, they mentioned that it took them 3 years to sort of establish themselves, to make themselves recognized, to make themselves look serious within the space, such that policymakers would want to engage with them. So I guess I can't say that I've had trouble having to access policymakers directly, but I just wanted to get to a point that accessing to policymakers is an issue, and it's interesting that sometimes we go about interacting with them thinking that this is so straightforward, whereas it's our seniors who have had to struggle in building such relations. I think that's one point I wanted to make. Another point I'd like to bring up is resource constraint. I think a lot of us here are doing environmental activism or environmental advocacy, voluntarily, right? Which means we will have commitments that we need to focus on, which means that we will just have to, ensure that our resources are allocated efficiently, such that we don't burn ourselves out. And I guess one thing I wanted to point out, again, by virtue of me having been within the climate space, I feel so lucky to have been able to go to COPs, the UN climate change conferences. I think one was in Bonn, one was in Katowice, and then there was a regional one which was in Bangkok. And I guess from an outsider's perspective, this looks all fancy and schmancy, and it may come across as a bit elitist. But the fact of the matter is, you need young people, especially from the global south, to be at these conferences, Otherwise, it's going to be filled by people of global north and young people from the global north, from developed countries. And the fact of the matter is, whatever they may be advocating for, whatever they may be lobbying for, may not be representative of young people from developing countries. So what I'm saying is, if you have, if you have an opportunity to go to these conferences and ensure that there is representation of young people from global south countries, go for it. If you have the means. Which then brings me to an initial point, or at least to my original point with regards to resource allocation. I think, in going to these conferences itself, it's so resource intensive. I remember when I was with Nottingham, I guess I felt lucky enough that at that time Nottingham was looking to partially fund at least its students to go to these sort of conferences, and amongst other things, we were also doing individual fundraising initiatives. And without these sort of supports, I think having the opportunity, or it would have been very, very difficult for me as well as my peers to have been at such conferences. So I think sometimes you just have to be realistic in a sense where, if you don't have the resources, it's so hard for you to be able to do these things. Which then brings me to my final point, I think we need to grasp the fact that a lot of people who do voluntary work, a lot of people who do activism. I mean, this is arguable, but you could say that a lot of us come from urban-centric backgrounds, right? We are people of privilege. We are people who have resources. We are people who have time on our sides. And I think sometimes in this is me speaking in hindsight. When we are and when I say this, I'm also reflecting upon myself, because whatever movement I'm a part of, whatever initiative I'm a part of, sometimes nowadays I look back and I'm conscious of the fact that whatever we urban young people may be lobbying for, whatever we young urban people may be advocating for, again, may not be representative of young people who come from different backgrounds. It may be not representative of indigenous young people. So I think it's important for us to sort of challenge that narrative and ensure that in providing a platform for young people, we need to ensure that marginalized communities are such that their voices are heard as well. And I wanted to clarify, this isn't me attacking any movement, this is just me sort of reflecting upon myself and realizing that, amongst other things, it is such a privilege for us to be doing these things. And as much as possible, and again, I'm reflecting upon myself, if there's an opportunity for us to platform marginalized communities, it's in our best interest for us to do that. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Shakil, so much for sharing. I think it was really eye-opening for you to just, straight up point the divide, whether that's intergenerational problems or how people think there's global unity within the climate activist movement, because it's true there's also that divide of privilege and who the movement benefits more than other communities. Yeah, it was really, really eye-opening, and it puts a lot of things in perspective to see what this movement is actually benefiting and who it should benefit instead. So thank you so much for sharing. Moving on, Salim, is there anything you would like to add? Any challenges you face within your journey as a youth advocate?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I'm just going to add on what Visya said earlier, and also Aina talking about having their sustainability habits all this way. And then there's you meet different people, some that do not agree with you and actually try to mock you with all this different responses. One thing I would like to share, just a short story, because there was one time I just thought, if I'm going for a wet market, that I sort of just reflect to myself, like I want to be conscious about what's the plastics I'm generating to the environment. So I start to just count it and all, and basically just one grocery in the morning in my market, I can actually generate a lot. So how I try to change it is I start to bring my own container to do it, all those vegetables, meat, fruits, and all. And it started really weird because how the groceries, how the market uncle and auntie, they look at me in a really weird way, like, what's going on with you? Why are you doing this? And it was pretty awkward. But back then, I kind of did it on a consistent manner, on a weekly basis, and eventually there's this change in behavior I can observe, where this seller, they start to also they get to know me more, and then they kind of tell people like, this is what you can do, bring your own plastic bag and all that, which does really actually inspire me to continue. And the point of the story is, I would say, your actions actually infectious. You can, when you are doing what's right for the environment, you can actually infect people around you and making them to make a change for this consumption habits and patterns. So yeah, coming back to this challenges I faced, I just want to share the challenges. Like I said, I started a movement back in a few years back, and basically this project is run by students. When you want to run projects, of course you need resources, and in terms of resources, it's like money and all. So you need sponsorship, all these things. So when you're so young, you have this kind of bold idea, want to make a change, and then you just approach all these corporate stakeholders, asking them whether they wish to sponsor you. Is actually a good deed for sustainability and all. So to me, my approach is always, it's all for the environment. I want to do everything, but eventually you start to learn that when it comes to all this conservation, all this management, everything involves people. So it's really important to get this message out, connecting with people to actually get them to understand it's their responsibility to protect the environment, because I would say conservation, protection, biodiversity protection, all of this is not just an environment, protecting the environment, but it's actually a sustainable decision. By doing that, you actually ensuring that the stability of economy, social, and also political stability as well, because all the resources we have from the environment provides us goods and services. So yeah, my challenges has been about communicating my ideas with stakeholders, with all these people, actually trying to bring them having that kind of insights that it's our responsibility to protect, or else no one else will. And which now is gonna move to the second challenges when it comes to basically. You all have heard of my background is conservation biology. If you are looking at Malaysia, the career prospects are actually quite low compared to overseas and all. So I remember once I graduated, it was just the coincidence time with pandemics, and it's really difficult to get a stable job, actually secure a better job opportunity, a position that helps you to, that where you can work on your passion. You actually comes to the point that, okay, should I work something that I love, or I work something that provide me a stable finance income? So I think eventually you have to I kind of have this kind of change and change in mindset, thinking that doing what's right, doing what's I trust in, having that kind of passion is you will eventually reach the aim that you want, your goal that you set for yourself. So yeah, the challenges is if you have something you love to do, you already know what you love to do, just go for it. Yeah, of course, everything has challenges, but you try to see opportunities within all this crisis, all these challenges, and be resilient. Yeah, that's basically my take for and all the challenges and how you try to rebound back and address all this. That's all from me.
Thank you so much for especially pointing out that, like, in activism you have to make some tough decisions, because you have to choose between what feels right, what is right for the cause, as opposed to what you have to do to survive, for you to make ends meet, and to choose something that is conventional, that works with the world. I think that is quite a tough decision to make. But thank you so much for sharing. Now let's move on to the next question of how youths can use the power of their voice to advocate and lead campaigns towards towards change for environmentally friendly policies and practices. Given the unique circumstances for the youth in this generation due to social standing as well as how far technology has come in our world, I think that sets a lot of new areas to be explored when it comes to how powerful this voice can be. And in the recent years, we've seen students raise awareness by skipping school, e.g. the Greta Thunberg movement, as well as a lot of teenagers these days are organizing all kinds of greener alternatives to activities that were once pastimes to the older generation, like organizing clothes swaps and sales of their own instead of resorting to fast fashion, things like that, as well as using social media, because that's so much more powerful in this time to spark awareness and conversations. Let's start with Lucia again. What do you think methods that the youth could use the power of their voice to evoke change?
Yeah, I agree that social media is the best tool because everyone uses social media now and you can reach everyone in the world just by social media. Especially for my project, WeSnot project, we actually did it 100% virtually because due to the pandemic also. Yeah, so like everything we discuss is all through the internet and also social media. And in just 1 year, we managed to reach around 12,000 audiences through the events we organize and also the infographic we share on our social media. And then one thing is also like you can advocate for the environmental issues through your institution. So for example, if you are still uni student, then you can talk to the uni management. So for example, for me and my team, we managed to talk to the uni management, and they're actually very open to this concept of, for example, like a zero waste campus. Yeah, and then recently they have been doing some meetings on how to improve the sustainability on our campus. So I believe that using our voice, especially to our peers and also to the management is effective, but then it's a long time progress. It won't be like, oh, one day you tell the person, then the person is like, okay, we will do it. No, you need to show them your efforts and also like show how effective is this going to be, and also like how they can get benefits from this. So for example, if we just reduce our plastic usage, then there will be lesser ocean pollution. So next time when you go to the beach, you will see lesser trash on the beach. Yeah. So I would say when advocating, we also need to tell people that the benefits and also like giving them the hope. I would say the hope is very important because like just now Aina mentioned, like we all then feel like, oh, everything is doomed. We don't have any things to do to save our future, but try to think from another aspect, like if right now we change to like renewable resources and we reduce our use in those single-use plastic, and everyone is switching from the wasteful lifestyle to a more sustainable lifestyle, then you imagine how the world will be. It will be like greener, less waste, and less pollution. Right. That's all from me.
Thank you so much for sharing. Totally agree that to lead by example is to set a precedence that other people can use as reference. So it will be a lot more achievable for a lot of other people who are looking in from the outside. Thank you so much for sharing. Next, Aina, anything to add? Any methods you have in mind on how the youth can use their power in this fight for climate activism?
Yeah, I mean, I think for many youths, if they're anything like me, it's there's a lot of ambition. I think you want to do a lot of things when you're young and be this by this age. But it doesn't hurt to start small. And I think that's my first advice. It of course starts with yourself, like you learn, what is the 3 R's and what other steps come after that, right? I think I remember as a child being too shy to tell the cashier to not put my food in a plastic bag. But you know, like it starts from just the understanding and the knowledge, and it's like, okay, like this is a responsibility. This is something I want to do for myself. So, you know, over time, I became more comfortable, you know, talking with the people and the cashier, be like, hey, I brought my reusable container. Can I please put something in here? It starts with just small changes in yourself and understanding that it's also a mindset change. It's a behavior change. It's not going to happen overnight. You start small. So you start small consistently every day. And I feel like that's something that helps me. And then, you know, now looking back, it's like, wow, you know, you've grown from when you started out when you were younger until now. And I think I was only like introduced to the zero waste lifestyle in 2017, but you know, it's a journey, right? Like it's not something you can do right away. And I think for me, living abroad really helped because I'm like a practicing Muslim as well. So there, I couldn't eat a lot of meat abroad. So I started exploring a lot of vegan options. So it's always just exploring all these opportunities and taking tiny steps that really helps, at least for your personal journey. But of course, like I was saying, if you're ambitious, you can also delve into leadership. So that was something I explored as well. I wanted to have a group of people with me to do things that we all mutually believe in. So that's how I started off as the sustainability officer at my university during my undergraduate degree. And I thought that was very successful. I learned a lot, of course. I was never perfect from the beginning, but it was that idea of like doing things together with the group and that group mindset that really helps push the idea to more people, and it grows exponentially from there. And I think besides all of those, I think one theme that sticks out in my personal journey is education. So I think I mentioned it a lot, learning, but not just learning, but teaching as well. And I think that's a very important part of awareness and advocacy, regardless of what platform you use, whether you're on social media or whether you are volunteering with an NGO and teaching students there about what you know and what you love and believe in. I think it's still a very, very important step. If you are in the position and, you know, privileged enough to have those kinds of opportunities, you should definitely run with it, go for it. And you're really never too young to start anything. And if you have a group of people with you, I think it really solidifies your goals together. And there's that sense of hope, like you were mentioning, Wisha, about, you know, you kind of really need that. And it's just about taking tiny steps every day. So I think for me, education was really important. And personally, I'm also a curious person. So I let what my strengths are take me to where I am. So I feel like for every youth that might be different, but essentially we're all focusing and going towards the same goal. So do what you love to do and really expand on your strengths. I think that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think those were some really excellent points that you made, especially with the starting small and what you're comfortable with, because if you just make too many drastic changes, it doesn't seem really sustainable.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it just wouldn't work out because somebody would not be used to it and all that. Thank you so much for sharing. Moving on to Shakil. In your own journey, how did the youth or yourself work to have yourselves be heard when it comes to making policy changes in the fight for more environmentally friendly options?
Yeah, just wanted to mention, I think Aina's cat wanted to get a bit of the limelight as well. It was very cute. And I also wanted to mention, I resonate so much with the plastic situation. You know, I think just this morning, I was at the office and I wanted to get some breakfast. I got a wrap, and the wrap is obviously wrapped in paper, right? And then the makcik wanted to give me plastic as well. So I thought, oh, tak apalah makcik, I don't need because it's wrapped in paper already. And I thought, and after that, but then the makcik was like, tak apalah dek, makcik tak rasa selesa lah. Let me insist on passing you the plastic. So I felt, okay lah, I kesian you makcik. Let me just accept the plastic. Which goes to show that these things are ingrained into us, you know, and unlearning this takes so much. But yeah, I really, really appreciated that example. So to answer Sabrina's question, I guess a few things I wanted to say, starting with calling for the involvement of young people or more young people in the first place, and in policymaking, ensuring that our voices are included in that. And I guess I wanted to bring towards a specific example where I guess to an extent this was a win for young people as far as climate policy making is concerned. So during my time with the Malaysian Youth Delegation, KASA, Kementerian Alam Sekitar and Air, which is essentially the Environment and Water Ministry, held a consultation session with regards to its national climate change policy. So technically, it's called the Nationally Determined Contributions. I know it's a mouthful, but essentially, it's Malaysia's National Climate Change Pledge. So they held an internal consultation session, and more often than not, these consultation sessions involve government agencies. They involve private sector. When it comes to the involvement of civil society, it's the veterans, it's people who have been there. But as I mentioned, when it comes to policy making, be it environment, be it climate change, any form of policy making, you want to ensure that whatever you formulate now is valid in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time. So whoever formulates these policies now, especially when it comes to the boomers, come climate change in 10, 20, 30 years' time, they're not going to be there. So I think it's vital for young people and for marginalized communities to ensure that whatever needs they have, whatever wants they have, are reflected in these policies, so that it safeguards our needs and wants when the time comes, So I think it was a year ago, or it was 2 years ago, when the Malaysian Youth Delegation got invited to this consultation session, and I think it brought mixed feelings, because obviously it was a victory for some young people, in a sense where we had the opportunity to provide our voices in formal policy making. We had the opportunity to provide official feedback. But then you realize, right, we shouldn't be the only young people in these rooms. That we should have more young people. We should have more marginalized communities. It's not just government agencies as well as ministries who should be formulating these things, because it's a national document, and it affects everyone. So that's one. I think in a nutshell, we should use our voices to call for more greater involvement of young people in policy making, as well as any form of policy formulation. And I think to build onto that, I think it's a reflection that came about this whole process is, yes, our ask is to ensure that there are more young people at the table, is to ensure that more young people have seats. But once we are at these seats, once we are at these tables, how are we able to, effectively contribute to the process? So I think one thing that we also need to ask is ensure that there are capacity building initiatives for young people, such that when we do have seats at the table, when we do have spaces to sort of make our voices heard and ensure that this gets incorporated into policymaking, we are able to make meaningful contributions. We are able to say things that are relevant. We are able to say things that are timely, and I think sometimes people just expect us to be experts at these things, but we're young people. We're only starting out, and it's not fair to expect us to say things that are completely accurate or completely timely. But it doesn't take away the fact that it's important to have our voices at the table. But we need to ensure that there are support systems and there are capacity building programs that are involved to ensure that we are capable of meaningfully contributing to these processes. And last but not least, I think very simply, we should just speak up, speak up and hold leaders accountable. And when we're doing that, I think it's important for all of us to be aware, including myself, speaking up and holding leaders accountable doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go to the streets, that's one way of doing it, as mentioned by most of you. I think social media is such a powerful platform now. I think we can all attest to that very recently, I think we've had very recent huge environmental wins as a result of, amongst others, social media pressure, of course, which entails people actually going onto the ground and speaking to policymakers. Writing, if you are interested in writing, if you think that speaking up or going to the streets isn't your cup of tea, pick up a pen or write an article and have it published in newspapers, have it published in news portals, and you'll realize that these pressure tools are so influential in altering public perception that it actually keeps governments in check. It keeps our leaders accountable. So we need to remember that once one of us starts speaking up, a lot of us will start speaking up as well, as all of you rightly mentioned. So yeah, speak up and believe in what you say. Thanks.
Thank you, Shakil, so much for sharing. I think it's really encouraging, especially when you point out that you have to have a seat at the table, and that I agree, it's quite unfair that people who are already in power and were getting really comfortable in their seats are extra critical towards any mistakes that this younger generation makes. And it's really encouraging to hear that we're young people, we're not supposed to have all the answers. That was your job. Thank you so much for sharing. Last but not least, we have Celine. How have you, as a youth in your journey, did you use your position and power to advocate for changes when it comes to making more environmentally friendly changes to practices and policies?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, I really like when just now Aina and Lisa talking about making changes, small steps at a time. It's actually really, really important. Like that's how you create changes, habits starts to develop with this 14 days. To me, that's how I think that habits can be developed in 14 days. If you consistently do that. So you can, I think for you actually right now, social media is like you can actually access, be involved in this. The community is actually very big. You're not alone doing all this together. So if you want to be more having everyone working, doing together all the sustainability habits, there's like zero waste challenges, campaigns going on regularly over time. So you can always explore all this local platforms, social media platforms. They have to provide all this information, which also I want to bring to the next point, which is I do believe in having voices. Voices actually brings everyone, make people aware of youth voices. But before we are doing that, it's always important to be informed. So be informed with all this information, having all this knowledge and information, understand what you really want to advocate on. So I think, excuse me, before you want to use your voice, it's always, you have to do your research, have all the science-based data. And I also employ youth out there, don't be afraid of science, R&D and research. It's a really interesting way to be involved in this, continue pursuing studies in academics. I think when you want to, when you make changes in policies, science data is actually the main thing for you to refer and make changes that's actually on that addressing that challenges. So I would really encourage more local in here to invest their time in science research, and at the same time also constantly advocate on environment issues. And to me, I think we can actually do more than that, as long as it's within your capacity. Of course, you will have a lot of things. There's a lot of commitment. You want to do a lot of things, but as long as you know where you can go, you know your capacity, and if you have those burnout issues, make sure you have your own support system, knowing what you actually want. And I think if you wanna use your voice, be creative. There's so many ways. It's not just one way. Of course, social media is actually quite convenient nowadays. For me, I'm still on a learning phase on social media. I am more on the I enjoy writing. I enjoy sharing my thoughts with people around me. So I'm always in from the science perspective. I love to write articles, read all this, and share with my peers. So there's more than just one way. You can actually work more. And lastly, I think just to add, something that is you can always connect with like-minded people, expand your network, and if you want to use your voice, make your voice, amplify your voice, connect with those people that are sharing the same values, understanding what's going on, and that's how you continue, kind of make the message relay out to those right people, and you work together to address which kind of challenges, environmental challenges, social challenges that you want to address on. And lastly, one last thing, which is be sustainable. Sustain your effort. It's really important to make sure all these efforts you're doing is on a long-term basis of and it's not just like what Sabrina earlier said. You can't just make drastic changes. It's actually not sustainable at all. So doing step by step, kind of make it incorporate to your life, and you kind of making sure the whole efforts keep going on a long-term basis. That's basically how we can keep going. Everyone, we are all in this. I would like to say we are all in this kind of marathon, running together, making sure everyone is on this equitable, having the equitable resources, and running together to protect our environment. So yeah, that's basically my take for that question. Thanks.
Thank you, Celine, so much for sharing. I do agree that it is an important step for you to gather all this knowledge and information, and as well as having a much more community-based spread of that information, because that's how you can spread awareness and the word, and to make it more sustainable on a larger scale. Thank you everyone so much for sharing. It is clear to see the significance and influence of youth power when it comes to making changes, be it in any situation, but in this particular circumstance when it comes to environmental changes. Last question, but this is much less formal, so it's more like quick, any short messages that you have for youth activists for now or in the future? Any messages you would like to pass on? Anyone?
Yeah, I think just very quickly from me, and I keep on sharing this with friends, with fellow excuse me, youth activists, youth advocates. I think don't be afraid to lean on a support system. I think there are certain times where you'll find that you'll question, why am I doing this? Is this worth my time? Am I doing the right thing? I think in instances like that, you would want to find a strong support system, people who remind you why this fight is so important and why it's worth keeping on the fight, essentially.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to add, I think mental health is really important. I think youth really do feel the burdens on their shoulders in terms of our future, because, we are also in charge of that. And we feel like we might not have a voice or a say in what happens maybe in the next 10 years even. So I think really taking your time to also distance yourself from social media. We are so bombarded by news, bad news, good news, whatever it is. And, we get to a point where we're overwhelmed. And I mentioned before, burnout is very, very real. So I feel like just taking a break, you deserve it, and you don't have to feel guilty. It doesn't always have to be a constant fight. You can take a step back when you need, but always remember the end goal. I feel like that would be my advice.
Okay, I'm just going to add the really simple one that I always like to say: impact starts with you. So whether it's big or small, as long as you start to make that change, you already it's making an impact. So basically, I would say like what Aina said, just even if you have all this burnout session, all this overwhelming issues going on, this community, environmental community, all of us are supporting each other. So look for like-minded people, like what Shakil said, have a support system. It's very big. Just reach out to them, and that's already a good step. Okay, that's all from me.
Yeah, I want to add on to this as well. So like before I joined my uni, so I was alone, like thinking of all the problems I get. But then during my uni, when my friends just start to speak it out, like, oh, I hate to get this plastic when buying things. It's like, oh, I also face the issue like yours. So you feel like actually we face all the common challenges So why not we just split it out and discuss it together so that we can face the challenges together. So yes, I believe that community really help us a lot. And in terms of like becoming an advocate for the environment, like as you guys can see, like all of us are kind of like from an environmental background, but then don't make it like demotivating you. Because like for my project, Waste Not Project, we actually have a lot of student volunteers from different schools. So like we have from business school, biosciences, psychology, economics. They all just come around and say, "Oh, I want to volunteer and I want to do something to help the environment." So don't feel like you are not belong to this field. Yes, because like Earth is everyone responsible. Yeah, everyone on this earth is responsible to save the environment and also our future. So another quote is also regarding the mental health, because like when we say about zero waste, we feel like, oh, we must live 100% zero waste. I must not see any waste in my house. Well, that is not very possible when we are currently in a very convenient society. Everything is coming plastics. Yeah, so I would say 1% is better than 0%. So as long as you have tried your best in doing all the sustainable practices, and that's good as long as you do something right. And also when you're doing, you're leading by example. And we say like action speaks louder than words, right? So when other people see and they see you doing it consistently, they will also join the movement. So don't give up and yes, be consistent. That's all from me.
Thank you everyone so much, especially to the speakers for your words of encouragement. And hopefully this will encourage everyone to adopt this sort of mentality, and hopefully it will encourage the younger generation or more people from the younger generation to pick up this baton and continue this marathon. Thank you for the speakers and as well for the viewers for watching. Stay tuned for more activities from KLEFF and remember to stay safe. Don't worry, we will be gathering again because we still do have a Q&A session after these advertisements. Hello and welcome back to our KLEFF Talk. Thank you again, everyone, for sharing. Now we will be moving on to the next component of this KLEFF Talk episode, which is the Q&A session. And it seems like that we already have quite a number of questions already coming in. So let's start with question 1. This person says, I can relate to some of the challenges you all face. Out of curiosity, has the reputation of eco or green jobs being a minimum wage job been a demotivating factor for all of you at some point? Who's ready to answer this?
Can I start actually?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it's a very, very good point that you make. But I think something my dad told me when I was younger and really like pursuing environmental science very strongly and all the little projects that I was doing, he said, you know, in 20 years, we need more people like you. And so that was very, very motivating for me because, you know, it's an inevitable thing that like, you know, the world's going to get worse, but because of the situation we're in, we're going to need more people, we're going to need more brains, and they're going to, you know, in terms of pay, of course, need to pay for the people to be there to do the hands-on work or to plan these projects and things like that. So now that I've like graduated from undergrad, you know, you think a lot about the money, like how much am I going to earn? And now that I'm doing a post-grad, it's also like, will I even be able to secure a job? after this. But I think, at least for me, money wasn't the end goal. Of course, you need to be able to sustain yourself, but is I follow my passion, and I feel like a lot of other people do that as well. So I think as long as you can find a place where you are really passionate in, I don't think money matters too much. As long as you have the resources you need. Of course, it's not the same for a lot of other people, but that's how I personally feel about it.
Can I just chip in some of my opinion?
Absolutely, absolutely, feel free.
This is a great question. So last year I came out as a fresh grad. It's a bit of a struggle when I try to look for a job and all. And I was thinking whether should I actually proceed with this direction, since it's conservation is actually not a popular kind of field at the moment, because tourism, everything is closed and all, and I always like to be in outdoor doing all this field works with environment and nature. So yeah, I just want to say if that's your passion, go for it. And of course we need to, like what Aina said, we always have to think of ways to sustain yourself. So I think my advice is go with your passion. You're still young, and try everything that you can to make sure you meet that kind of goals you set for yourself. And from there you can actually know your own capacity, where you can actually find a balance between both, when you can also sustain yourself and do what you like. So basically that's my motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to add a bit to that as well. So I really like Aina's anecdote about how, in 5, 10, 15 years time, I think people within the sustainability field will be highly in demand. And I guess if I were to add my own anecdote, I think, being within the environmental and climate space is somewhat like becoming a doctor. I guess there's a lot of indirectly, there's a lot of training involved. There's a lot of experience that you have to gain. And I think within the first maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your professional career, I think you may think that the pay is not commensurate with the effort that you put in. But, and I'm speaking from personal experience, after you reach a breakthrough, you're going to realize that the opportunities that you are exposed to are such that the pay is going to be rewarding. And I say this out of personal experience, because I started off being very active within, the environment and climate change space during my university days itself. Meaning to say, I started, I proactively tried to gain experience even before, whilst I was still studying, as with a lot of you. And it got to a point where, because of the experience I had gained during my studies, it landed me within a field I wanted to get into during my for my first job, which was within the renewable energy field. And truth be told, the pay was average, for someone who's just starting out. And I would say, after having been at said company for 2 years, and now I'm within the British High Commission, I would personally say that I'm at the British High Commission doing environmental and climate change work. I would say that the pay is quite rewarding. So it's a matter of, I guess, too long don't read. It's that of a doctor, I guess. It starts off with quite low pay, but as you gain experience, as you gain qualifications, as you gain more skills, eventually you will find that the work and the pay is such that it's rewarding. So that's my take.
Thank you so much. Lucia, do you have anything to add?
For me, I'm still undergraduate, and yes, I actually when I told my friends or like any elderly, I told them, oh, I'm doing environmental science, and the first question they ask is, are there any jobs for this? Yeah, I would say like it's getting more and more, because right now you can see even like shopping mall, like all the supermarket, they even mention like sustainability, and then you can see all the green campaigns and stuff. They actually need people in this environmental field to help them on initiating such campaigns, right? So I would say there are quite many job opportunities. But in terms of the pay, yes, some of the job like in some of the field might not be so rewarding as other field. But I would say, yeah, I agree with Celine and Aina, because we're still young. So just do what you like, and then soon you will also find that maybe what is most rewarding is actually the experience and also the outcome that you gain from your work.
Yeah. Sorry, Sabrina, just very quickly, I wanted to add to that, right?
Okay.
Just very shortly, I think with a lot of job opportunities, it's on top of what you know, it's who you know as well. So I think regardless what field you're in, you know, especially within the environmental and climate change space in Malaysia, because it's quite small, you'll find that it's well connected. I think get connected to as many people as possible, and you'll find that opportunities will come to you.
All right, thank you everyone, and thank you to the person who asked this question. Moving on, are there any environmental organizations that are active in assisting youth in project management and mentoring youths in advocating for environmental awareness?
Can I go first? Thank you for the question.
Absolutely, yes.
I'm gonna start with Ecoknights. Basically, that's when I graduated, I joined Ecoknights, and basically you can maybe Wisia can share her internship experience as well later on, because she's also an intern in Ecoknights. But yeah, I think the whole process in project management, for me, I would say like Ecoknights has basically became a training hub for me, to not from just partnership development and all these collaborations. We always get this opportunity, and the whole environment there is always about learning. We want to have that. We always have the culture of everyone gets the same opportunity to learn, as long as you know what you want and you express what you really want to learn, and they always give you that kind of opportunity. So yeah. But of course, there's a lot of environmental organization right now in Malaysia that's always encourage youth to take part, be more proactive, and yeah, understand what's your strength, and leverage your skills in there, and hone all of your leadership skills throughout the whole internship volunteering process. Yeah, that is all from me. Thanks.
Yeah, so I joined Ecoknights for my summer break as my internship, and before that, I was in Waste Not, and what we did is like a very small scale. So like I just gather a few of my friends, and we only have around like 50 volunteers at that time. So it is actually my first time on like managing such a project. And after I interned at Ecoknights, I really learned a lot, and I actually applied what I learned at Waste Not at all. So at Ecoknights is actually it's not about working with the environment, it's actually working with the people and how you work with people to help the environment. Yeah. So because most of the time, like we environment students, we always say like, oh, we don't like to hang out with people, we likely to hang out with like trees, hugging trees and stuff. But in fact that we actually need people together to help the environment. So at Ecoknights, I really learned like how to deal with people and also how to work with other people, and especially working with like students that are not very interested in the environment, but we want to let them to like know why you should pay attention to environment, and also teaching them like how they can do as student to help the environment. So from this, we did a lot of events like a virtual talk and also like social media competition, because the time is pandemic, we can't do a lot of physical activities. But then through virtual events, we managed to get like almost 60 to 100 students in total from all our events to join and also know more about environment. And at Ecoknights, we have different we have interns from different fields. So I also met like friends from psychology and even cognitive science. I also wonder, hey, why are you interested in environment? Then they said like, actually I'm like since young I'm been enjoy living in nature. I like forests and stuff, and I wonder like what I can do to help the environment. So they joined Ecoknights as intern, and yeah, so I would say the experience is really rewarding and really learn a lot. And yeah, I would say that I really grow a lot from it, and I'm still applying the principles and also experience that I gained from Ecoknights. Yeah, if you want to do some internships or even just volunteers, yeah, you can try Ecoknights.
Thank you so much, Shakil.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think where do I start now? I think there's this organization called Youth United for Future. I think they had a formal program where they connected aspiring environmental advocates with mentors, people who have been established within the environmental field. So that's pretty cool. You can check out Youth, YUFE. They're on Instagram. It stands for Youth United for Environment, I think. And I also wanted to echo what Celine as well as Wisha mentioned. I think, in general, before you start working, joining a voluntary organization gives you a lot of initial experience before you get into before you start working professionally. And I would say it's personally helped me a lot within my career, because frankly, a lot of the experiences that I've gained by doing voluntary work has led me to where I am now in my professional career. So do not underestimate the value voluntary work and internships or side work brings to you.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that actually. So yeah, it was Youth United for the Earth. Yeah, I follow them on Instagram and they're really, really great. Highlighting a lot of youth, doing a lot of great work, but also raising awareness about a lot of other issues, especially specific to Malaysia. So that's an Instagram you can follow if you want to know more. I think Celine and I were both part of Roots and Shoots Malaysia. So that's a program actually that youth can participate in. Definitely great. It pairs you up with an NGO that you can work with, and definitely you can learn a lot of skills from there. And there's also Fuse Eco Tier. Yes, I think I'm saying that correctly. They are open for internships right now. So if you are looking for somewhere to start, it's a great way. So I think internships and volunteer work have a lot of great value, especially in the environmental and climate change sector here. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much to the people who answered and the people who asked as well. Our next question is addressed to Aina. This person asked, I would like to know, since you have volunteered overseas and locally, are there any differences in the advocates' awareness or attitude towards the climate crisis?
Yeah, so I saw this question. I was like, honestly, not really. I think youth in general, like Gen Z and this upcoming generation, are very, very vocal, very, very interested in the climate movement and all the climate injustices that are ongoing globally, not just within the countries that they live in. So when I was in the US, I think there were quite a lot of programs that were going on, hosted by many various like organizations, be it government or non-government. And I think many youth flock to them. They're like, it's really exciting, something to do. Of course, also something to add to your CV, once you apply for college or whatever. But I see the same thing here in Malaysia. There are many youths not that I personally don't know of, but I see on Instagram, on TikTok, within my community, doing the most that they can with the resources that they have. And I think the difference is only within the capacity in which they execute anything that they put their mind to. So in the US, protests and rallies are a huge thing. And they're generally safe, especially those like the ones that, march for the environment and things like that. But here, I don't see it as big as in the US, but there's definitely a lot more online work, a lot of programs and projects like we just discussed, all these amazing organizations that you could read into and intern for. So I think in terms of opportunities, at least within the countries that I've lived in, I think the youth are doing the best that they can, and there's really not too many differences in their motivations. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. And now we'll be moving on to our last question, which is addressed to Shakil. Can you share with us what are the steps for the youth to penetrate Parliament and gain access to lawmakers to make legislative change?
I just wanted to make a disclaimer that the first part of the question, penetrating Parliament, that's a hard question because I personally don't have experience in that, but I do have experience in engaging lawmakers. And this is with organizations such as My Hutan, which is an environmental campaign under Undi 18, as well as the Malaysian Youth Delegation. And I guess, again, for the second part where, accessing lawmakers to make a change, I think a specific story I'd like to share is when the Malaysian Youth Delegation was invited to provide official feedback to Malaysia's climate change plan. So technically, it's called the Nationally Determined Contribution, but basically, it's a country's national climate pledge to the UN. So I think it was interesting to note that there weren't many young people within the room or within that meeting because it was a virtual meeting. So as usual, it's government actors, it was government-linked entities, it was private companies as well as civil society actors, but those who are a bit more those who are very experienced, and there weren't many young people. So then and there, realizing that we were probably the only youth organization to have been able to provide official feedback was such a momentous feat for us. And the way we did this, I guess, is through relationship building. Because the Malaysian Youth Delegation, for instance, and then the likes of My Hutan or Undi 18, they are organizations who have been within the policy-making space, be it environment or policy-making in general for a while. I think they've been within the space for at least 5 years. So I think where you see that organizations are able to access policymakers and ensure that their input is heard, I think it needs to be noted that there had been a lot of relationship building over the past 3, 4, 5 years, because it's important for them to establish themselves first, get recognized by these policymakers, and make sure that these policymakers see that these youth organizations are legitimate and they are here to make meaningful change. So I think I cannot emphasize how important relationship building is for a youth organization with relevant policymakers, because that's when you gain access to provide your input and try to make an effort in making a difference with regards to policymaking. With regards to penetrating Parliament, again, I don't have any experience in that. But if I were to speculate, I think we need to be selective with regards to I guess policymakers that we reach out to. Say, for instance, we have the environment minister who's meant to speak during a parliamentary session. I think we are able to anticipate when parliamentary sessions happen, and before those sessions happen, I guess we try to make it a point to speak to them and try to deliver our message beforehand, so that by the time it is during parliamentary session, they will bring up those points. So it's no guarantee that he or she will bring up those points, but I think that is one of the tactics to keep in mind to ensure that we try to penetrate parliamentary the parliament. And mind you, within parliament itself, there isn't much discussion pertaining environment and climate change, but slowly and surely we are in the right direction. Anyone would like to add to that?
All right, that's all for now, yeah. So that concludes the Q&A session for today. Thank you all for all the questions that you sent in, and we hope that you were able to get the answers you were looking for through this talk. Thank you for the speakers as well for taking out your time to do this with us, as well as sharing your experiences and sharing these amazing tips with the youth. We wish you all the best for your future in environmental works. And lastly, thank you to IGM for hosting our 2021 KLEFF Talks. That's all for today. And thank you for supporting this year's Kuala Lumpur Eco Film Fest. We'll see you again next time. Bye.